Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Columbia Online, the Church of Courageous Love, Radical Welcome, and Deep Connection. Now, more than ever, it's important for us to gather and remember that our church is not a building, but a beloved community for all of us together. My name is Tim Dickerson, and I'll be your worship associate this morning. Today's service is one of many of our lay-led services this summer. The lay-led services are a great chance to hear from and learn about those that call this community we build here home. While we certainly miss gathering in person on Sundays, the online services have given us an opportunity to connect with many people we might not have met otherwise. We welcome in particular the members of the Jefferson City Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, as well as all of you in Missouri and beyond. A few comments about protocol for today's online worship. We are in Zoom, and we're also streaming live on Facebook. We are in Zoom webinar, so we can't hear you or even see you. So feel free to eat your breakfast in your PJs. Don't worry if your dog's barking or mine's underneath my desk scratching the floor, or even if your children are making joyful noises. You will be able to say hello and interact in this, with the service through the chat feature. So make sure that you select all panelists and attendees from the two drop-down list in your chat feature so that everyone can see your comment. Otherwise, just us panelists get to see it. This will be particularly useful if you wish to share a joy or sorrow when we reach that portion of the service. If this is your first time worshiping with us, please fill out our digital visitors card at the link provided in the chat and let us know a little bit about you. This morning, I want to thank our tech host. We have Linda Valentine running the slides. Kira Michelou is monitoring our chat. I also want to thank Jeremy Wagner, Director of Ministry Music, for his assistance with this morning service, as well as Jamila Batchelder, Director of Religious Education. I also want to thank Hans Bridger Harith for his moving and inspirational music, always, not just today. And a very special thanks to those that are offering their reflections this morning, Jenny Bossaller and Kate Ensign-Bedford. Today's service is all about the values that move us. If I would have thought about it earlier in the order of service, I would have put two U's and made them capitalized, but I didn't. So for those that are looking at the order of service, the values that move you use could also be applicable. At this time, I would encourage each of you to take a few moments this morning, maybe even while Hans is inspiring and settling us in for the service, to write down what you feel are your top 5 values currently in your life. And now, let's sit back, settle in, and enjoy our prelude. Always enjoy our prelude. So, what values move you in your life? While you're on this earth, what set of values guide you in your dealings with other humans, the animals, and our earth? How often do you think about your values and how they impact your life and move you to embody what you say you value? There most certainly are a plethora of values in this world for you to choose from. So, what brought you to assimilating and acclimating the values that you currently hold dear to you in your lives today? Do your values ever change? Or have you ever had your perception of any of your values change as you grow and learn and become more self-aware? Every religion has its own set of values, and even then, there are different interpretations of the same value. We UUs have what I like to call an automatic covenant, otherwise known as the 7 principles. Our first principle is a huge reason why Shannon and I started attending a UU church back in Illinois. The fact that several years earlier, one of my college classes had a UU minister come and speak, and lo and behold, that minister was a woman. And coming from a Southern Baptist background, I was blown away. However, I thought it was insanely cool, and I still do. When you think of your values, do you also think of what is valuable to you? Are your values and what is valuable to you in alignment? If not, what do you do in order to work towards a life where your values help you define and shape what is valuable to you? For me, how we embody our first UU principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, when faced with others that value property and statues more than the beloved and sacred lives within our Black community, is a question I continue to struggle with. And now, if you would please join us together in hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. You may now wish to light a candle at home or look in the chat for a digital chalice. As we light our chalices, the symbol of our faith, at home or digitally, will you please join me in lifting your voices in homes across our city, country, and world to share our weekly words of affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Good morning. This weekend, 2 civil rights heroes passed away. C.T. Vivian and John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis. And I've been reading a lot of quotes from John Lewis and listening to some of his old speeches. And I'm really moved by some of the values he expresses in these. This is an example of one that I've seen shared around a lot. He said, "Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful. Be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. Never ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble." So the kids and I next week are going to talk about the second half of that, about good trouble. But I want to think today for our centering about the first half, about the value of optimism. I think as someone who identifies as a realist, I've tended to be dismissive of that as a value. And that it's too easy to see optimism as naive or foolish. But what I've been thinking about this weekend is what a powerful spiritual practice it is, one that takes enormous courage to look at those secret dreams that we have that feel sometimes so far beyond possible, and to believe they are possible. And it opens us up to so much heartbreak. And so sometimes I think we're afraid to do that. But John Lewis, again and again, called on people to be optimistic. And so today, as we center, I want you to find that place deep inside of yourself where you store away those things that you most want to be possible, but feel too much to hope for. And I want you to say to yourself right now, this will happen. Maybe not in this day, maybe not in this week or month or year, but it will happen. And let yourself really believe that. And I would love for you, as you open yourself up to that, to share in the chat what those deepest dreams you have are. That will happen someday. We have a dream to live in co-housing in a deep community with others. That we will have racial justice. That we will have less fear. That we will become the people we want to be, that we will become parents, that we will respect and care for everyone, no matter who they are. That this will happen. That there will be a vaccine for COVID-19. That we will live in an anti-racist country, and that all else will fall into place. That we will heal the wounds in our families and be able to share joy together. That there will be a cure for cancer. That there will be more safety for all people to live their lives in happiness. As we center in optimism that all these things will become true, let us know that we will believe it and then we will make them true. So let it be.
Now is the time in our service when we hold one another in heart across the distance, knowing that our community is with us and that we are held in love amid life's sorrows and joys alike, now and always. I now invite you to share your joys and sorrows in the chat, and I will read them and mention them as able. So we have a sorrow of Rita's sister was confirmed with COVID-19, hoping for her recovery while her family awaits their own testing results. Megan Gore has a joy of Ara. Lance and I just finished our first family vacation this past week, and everyone survived, along with having many, many joyful moments. That's great to hear. We've got a concern. I thought my brother was doing better, but once again, I cannot get a hold of him, worried that he's in the hospital. I believe that's from Kira. We'd like to wish a big sister happy birthday. See the names, I'm sorry. Me. Let me get the, there we go. Let's try this again. Okay, from Kate Ensign, a happy, my parents can join us this morning, so we've got a joy there. From Logan and Genevieve Howard, joy to be home with my very favorite person. Patty Doss, a joy for all who are making these virtual services happen. For Sarah Naji, a joy to be able to return to work after months of furlough. Woohoo! What my thoughts are with everyone still in financial instability during this time. We've got a joy from Tonette Repetto, a joy of my daughter and grandson moving back to Columbia. Awesome. Jenny, we have overcoming a fear of death for Jonathan. Connie says, happy birthday to Robbie. Happy birthday, Robbie, on the last Wednesday. Happy 15th to you, Robbie. Barb Tucker is sorry for all the unwanted pets, but a joy that I will be raising puppies for the next 2 months. Robin Dupley is sorry for a family disagreement over religion, but joy for a gift of technology to allow family and friends to connect across the distance during this pandemic. Absolutely. Jenny, we have Lucius is home from the hospital from Emma. And then enormous grief over the drowning death of Leo Malkin Sturtz, whose obituary was published this week. That's from Rosie Geiser. And then Patty Doss has a thanks for all blessings Senator Lewis gave to us. Absolutely. Thank you all for sharing. We'll just wait a few more seconds here just to see if anyone else has any joys or sorrows. Okay. Well, now is the time in the service when we join in the spiritual practice of generosity, guiding our hearts away from the fear of scarcity all around us and remembering that by sharing and supporting one another, we feel most human.
And Tim will be doing the offertory.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we shall be known by to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now. And what a time to be alive in this great turning. We shall be, we thrive. It is time now. And what a time to be alive in this great turning. We shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
Oh, technology is so much fun. So much fun. Let's see here. Get this figured out. There we go. Wow, technology is so much fun. So just so everybody knows, when you run a Zoom meeting and you're sharing a video in PowerPoint, don't touch anything else. So, because it stops the video. So Unfortunately, hopefully you were able to all get the gist of that song. It's so beautiful. I highly recommend that you check it out later. The name of the group is Muse. I always say it wrong. Talk about practicing unconditional love, as we're going to talk about. And then Thrive Choir does another version that is just phenomenal too. So we will get this all figured out. So that song, the lyrics that just struck me very profoundly as I listened to it are it is time now that we thrive. I really just love hearing words like that. It's time now that we lead ourselves to the well. We don't let anybody else lead us there. We lead ourselves there. We find that way. It's a great time to be alive during the great turning when we shall learn to lead in love. And those words spoke to me so profoundly. My friend Ezzy at work, who I often have lots of intellectual conversations similar to probably what we often have too, as you use, shared that song with me one day at work. And as I was preparing for this service, I kind of just put it off because I had a lot of other things that I was thinking about. And then when I finally kind of really had a good idea of what I wanted to talk about, I actually opened up the song and listened to it. And I was just like, this is perfect. And I couldn't stop listening to its prophetic and profound lyrics. I mean, seriously, how can you not love hearing those things? Once again, like, it's time now that we thrive. It's time now that we lead ourselves to the well. It's time now that we invoke this great turning where we shall learn to lead in love. Today's service is centered around the values that move you, or the values that move us. And any guesses on what mine is? Let's just say that I, Timothy Dickerson, and I am in love with unconditional love. What's not to be, right? A love without limitation or conditions sounds pretty stellar in my book. I've been an unconditional love fanatic ever since I heard the term and pieced the words together to comprehend the meaning. I remember growing up and my father, a Southern Baptist top minister, as well as a son of a Southern Baptist minister, preaching on it and talking about it at the table as we ate. It was truly an encouraging and frankly intoxicating message that I attached myself to and never let go. I was sort of an ornery child, and I also questioned everything, and I mean everything. So this idea of unconditional love was something I longed to receive as well as to give freely. The concept that I did not have to question someone else's love for me facilitated an environment that was very, very calming to grow up in, especially for a hyperactive kid who constantly questioned everything. True unconditional love also facilitates a place of safety for us to exist as we truly are, with no mandates, with no expectations, with no limitations, but to just be you. And as a young, naive, white, cis, male, heterosexual that I was, I blissfully skipped along in life thinking that unconditional love was meant for everyone. Boy, was I naive. My interpretation that everyone, and I mean everyone, is worthy of unconditional love did not seem to be exactly the same as those I learned it from. This is a perfect example of how many people may share the same words of their values and how those values, when enacted, can be completely different. This was a very hard lesson for me to learn, but oftentimes for others, without my privilege, this was not the case. That unconditional love for some, unfortunately, comes with ultimatums, conditions, mandates. Learning this, though, was a chance for me to listen more deeply and to look for others who share this same interpretation of this value. It helped me to become more self-aware of times when I may not be living up to this value that is so important to me. My father often told me, actions speak louder than words. I think I heard that a lot. So if I'm going to talk the talk, How do I walk that walk? I truly feel when we facilitate unconditional love for one another, it brings about a safe place for all of our inner lights to shine. Gregory David Miller writes the following about our chalice, but I also feel it's very applicable here. The fire is a reminder of the light within us all. The yearnings for freedom, the longing for truth, the flame of intuition, the torch of conscience. We dedicate this service to the remembrance of this holy light. This holy light that exists in all of us could also be considered one's inherent worth and dignity. So how do we work towards a world where every holy light is granted this safety of unconditional love? How do we abandon the society that literally starves and suffocates the oxygen of so many of our beloved and sacred holy lights? How do we work together to create society where all holy lights shine brighter because of one another? One where we love to feed and fuel and fan one another's holy lights. In working through this reflection, I came across Mark Nepo's description of unconditional love, and well, let's just say my interpretation of unconditional love seems to be ever evolving. Mark Nepo writes, unconditional love is not so much about how we receive and endure each other, as it is about the deep vow to never under any condition stop bringing the flawed truth of who we are to each other. It's that deep vow to never under any condition stop bringing the flawed truth of who we are to each other. Wow, that's a tough task to take on, right? Sometimes it's even hard to bring the flawed truth of who we are even to ourselves. Am I right? Can I get an amen? Let alone to others. Mark's definition seems to be quite a bit different than what I grew up thinking unconditional love meant. But what I feel Mark is alluding to here is the hard work it takes to reach and maintain true unconditional love. It's easy to get caught up in the glitz and gloss of, I love everyone. Trust me, I still do this day, and there's nothing wrong with it. However, we got to do that hard work. And Mark challenges us to be our authentic selves, to know we'll make mistakes, but to always bring our true selves to one another. Mark also wants us to make sure we understand its definition does not mean that we accept others' hurtful behaviors, but rather accept their flaws. When we do this work of bringing our true holy light to another holy light, and that other holy light makes us aware that we're blocking their flow of oxygen, we really should take a step back, listen to their light, learn from their light, change our behavior so that their light is granted the safe space it deserves to shine brighter. What a great way to show that you value the gift of unconditional love, not merely by just becoming self-aware of your behavior and saying you value it, but also changing a behavior that depletes the oxygen of those you love unconditionally, no matter how hard it is for you to do, no matter. How else will we be able to bring about the great turning, where we all lead ourselves, all of us, to the well, and we all learn to lead in love?
Yay, thanks. That was really, really nice, Tim. So can you all hear me? Just real quick. Am I on? Cool, okay. I've been reading a book, and part of it was about Gandhi. And so, I mean, I can't say that I'm like an expert on Gandhi or anything. So I've been doing a little bit of reading, and this one particular part was about self-sufficiency. And so I'm going to be talking about this. I wanted to give you a link to this reading real quick, so that I put the link right there. And parts of this I agree with, and parts of it I have a few problems with. But anyway, we're going to go with it because it's a good reading. Truth and nonviolence form the foundation of the order of my conception. Our first duty is that we should not be a burden on society, i.e. we should be self-dependent. From this point of view, self-sufficiency itself is a kind of service. After becoming self-sufficient, we shall use our spare time for the service of others. If all become self-sufficient, none will be in trouble. In such a state of affairs, there would be no need of serving anybody. But we have not yet reached this stage, and therefore we have to think of social service. Even if we succeed in realizing self-sufficiency completely, man being a social being, we will have to accept service in some form or other. That is, man is as much self-dependent as interdependent. When dependence becomes necessary in order to keep society in good order, it is no longer dependence, but cooperation. There is no one weak or strong among those who cooperate. Each is equal to the other. There's a feeling of helplessness and dependency. Members of a family are as much self-dependent as interdependent. They are all co-operators. So also when we take a society, a nation, or the whole of mankind as a family, all men become co-operators. If we can conceive a picture of such cooperation, we shall find that there would be no need of support from the lifeless machine. Instead of making the greatest use of machinery, we shall be able to do with the least use thereof, and therein lies the real security and self-protection of society. So that speaks to something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and that's the reading. And again, that was from Gandhi, and I am not a Gandhi expert, but I will move on to my thoughts about my values. And I started thinking, when Tim asked me to do this, I was thinking about how I don't always manage to live up to my values at all. It's always been, it's hard to do. So this reflection, it was supposed to have been recorded because I signed up to live in a tent for a week at Dancing Rabbit Eco Village, but that was canceled due to COVID, and that was just canceled a couple of weeks ago. I think they were holding out to see if it could happen. So I have to admit I'm disappointed in that, because that experience was really all about deepening values of cooperation and ecology. Kind of goes along with that reading. Among others, there are other things to explore there. But anyway, I'll start by defining values as I understand them. And I'm going to talk about an exercise that I found about values, and then I'll get into a few of my own values. So a value is aspirational. It's an expression of how we can live to make the world more like what we want the world to look like. So our values should help us to determine our priorities and to make decisions about how we're going to live our lives. Living up to our values, therefore, feels good. It gives us a sense of integrity. Not living up to our values, on the other hand, causes internal conflict because our lives are out of alignment. When I sat down and I was thinking about this, I turned to the 7 principles of universal Unitarianism and also to Google. So I found a page from a career exploration site, which is Mind Tools. Hold on, I'm going to give you this link as well, because it is something that you might want. There you go. So that's the page. So the author of this page breaks down 4 steps in defining values, identifying your values. You might sort of jot these down because it's kind of a fun exercise. So first, identify the times when you were happiest, what you were doing, who you were with, et cetera, et cetera. Identify the times when you were most proud. Identify the times when you were the most fulfilled and satisfied. And then you can, from those things, determine your top values based on your experiences of happiness, pride, and fulfillment. They provide this long list of values, including things like accuracy, ambition, being the best, calmness, generosity, holiness, intellectual status, security, timeliness, things like that. So finally, you can prioritize your list, and then you reaffirm it by figuring out if the list really fits with your life and your vision for the future. And like I said, it's fun. I could actually identify some of my top values from the list. So for instance, adventurousness, clear-mindedness, compassion, creativity, exploration, growth, honesty, economy, and empathy were listed. And I was like, I can see that those would be some of my values. So furthermore, some of them go together and they are actionable. So compassion and empathy are manifested in listening. I think that listening is one thing that I really work on, and it's a value that I have. I try to listen to a certain podcast on being every week when I'm going on a walk. It's interviews, and the person who does it, Krista Tippett, is this amazing host and interviewer. And that's one thing that I love about it so much. She always makes it so great because she really, really pays attention to the person who she's interviewing. She does her homework and she reads what her guests have written before she interviews them. So, or at least somebody from her team does, so that they always feel like their ideas are really important. So in fact, some of the interviews are about people who observe and listen. So to silence or animals. And I think that if we were all to be better at this, then the world would be a much more beautiful and kinder place. There's even a supper club movement that sprung from her podcast, where the goal is to listen to other people to develop empathy and compassion for people who aren't necessarily like themselves. So empathy and listening are some of my values. And those require a lot of work and skill to hone, and I am in the process of working on those, and I cannot say that I always live up to them. Another value I've been thinking a lot about is self-sufficiency. That reading was about self-sufficiency, and it didn't make the cut on the mind tools list. Self-reliance was on the list, but I think they're very different values. So let's return to Gandhi here. It's not self-sufficiency in the sense that we don't actually rely on other people, but that we're better when our work is interdependent and cooperative as a group, which in turn can increase our resiliency. So it's aligned with the sort of DIY ethos that I embrace. I love to make things. I do it all the time. I want to surround myself with things that are beautiful and handmade so that I can live in a world where things are not just mass produced, because I feel like homemade things are so much more valuable. We don't want to throw them away. It's not convenient to make things. It's easier to just go out and buy them. But what we're supporting when we buy things, you have to think about who's being exploited by your purchases. So it's not a very practical value. It goes against the systems of empire and capitalism that are so ingrained in us and so that we're so attached to from our economic system. So it's really a radical, and I think it's also pretty adventurous. So as an aside, the alternatives to capitalism class that's going on in this church has been really great. So thank you, Reverend Dawson, for offering this. The ideas in that class, they marry so many values that we can live in a kinder world that does not rely on exploitation of people, and I would add animals. So that goes back to what Gandhi was saying. If we can conceive of a picture of such cooperation, we shall find that there would be no need of support from the lifeless machine. Instead of making the greatest use of machinery, we shall be able to do the least use thereof, and therein lies the real security and self-protection of society. So his Salt March was about regaining control of natural resources that had been stolen by trade, by empire, that exploited the workers and left everyone poor and reliant on companies that seek to only deepen dependence on the company. Resisting is tough. But as we've talked about in that class, for instance, hearing about B corporations, which have to pass this rigorous vetting system of ethical and sustainable practice, thanks, Pat Matthews, and other alternatives, it's super exciting. It's great to hear about ways to live out the values of interdependence with nature, respect for beings, and justice, equality, and compassion in human relations, which are the UU principles, some of them. It's also really hard to live out this value when living in the society. So even making our own clothes means going to the fabric store and buying fabric that wasn't produced in environmentally sound ways, probably. So I'm working through this. You know, I'm not Gandhi and I don't spin my own wool yet. But it's easy to come up with excuses for not living up to your values, especially when they're in conflict with the greater society. So, for example, car ownership is a source of conflict in my own value system, because there are a lot of expectations that we're going to show up to events, give people a ride, take our children to sports, orchestra concerts, and lessons. So there are a lot of times in this town in particular when we kind of need a car. Car ownership is expensive, but it's easy. And life is hard. So deciding what's easier can win out over principle. So And right now, as we speak, we're all on computers, and this essay was composed on a computer, and I work on computers all the time. It's not actually in alignment with my values, but at this point in time, I haven't figured out how to cut that cord. I'm a professor, and what I teach is aligned with the values that I believe in, but how I do it is problematic. The entire lifespan of our electronic lives is basically an environmental nightmare. So, we're all part of the problem in that sense, but alternatives. So in the future, I hope to be able to figure out how to live out my values, but that's going to take removing myself from the place where I currently am. So, the way that I consume and produce, and turning those things, turning my world into more items of beauty that I want to live and have around me. It's not about me, though. It's about not contributing to systems of oppression and about not having things with that kind of baggage. So it's really complicated. So wrapping up, there are a lot of turning points in our lives, I think, that might prompt a reevaluation of our values, or just thinking about ways that we can emphasize certain values over others because we have different opportunities or different outside pressures. So for me, my daughter finishing up high school was an event. COVID was another one. So in giving up a car, I'm driving much, much less. And I intend to give up my car altogether before long so that we can just share one. Not only are there not that many places to drive right now, but I don't have to drive to lessons or to take her to orchestra concerts, which I do miss a lot. I do worry about not being able to drive to see my parents and in-laws if they need me on a dime. I've tried to buy very few things lately, very consciously, and I'm trying to only buy, for instance, organic foods to support more sustainable agricultural practices. And I'm trying to spend more time listening and making art. Matt, my husband, and I have talked about downsizing at some point to a smaller home where we can have a garden. Our rocks and shade garden is not conducive to vegetables, but we'll get there one day. So living out our values, I think, is a process. It's a journey, an adventure, and a source of happiness and fulfillment, ultimately. So finding communities that can support our values is a key. The principles of this church and the leadership of so many members who live out their values better than I do, I think might offer a structure to direct our actions within this community. Thank you.
turn it around? Do we ask too much to be a little bit stronger? I wanna give you what you mercy. What will become of us? Could we one by one, could we turn it around? Maybe carry on just a little bit longer. I wanna give you what you need. Lift up your eyes, lift up your heart.
Hi. I was born and raised United Methodist. That's no secret. My great-grandfather was a Methodist minister, and I was brought up in the church. I think I was at the church, almost as much as I was at home and involved in every youth program offered at the church. My family, mainly the women and my brother, centered themselves at the church. That was life, and that was my life. Now, I can't be a United Methodist for some fundamental reasons that I won't go into here, but I'm still comfortable visiting their churches because it still feels like home, except when they bring out the praise band. Since when do staunch United Methodists have praise bands anyway? But I digress. I'm a solid Unitarian Universalist. I want to make that clear. But while that is the truth, my United Methodist heritage laid the underpinnings of my values. I mean, how could it not with as much time as I put in? John Wesley wrote, "Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as you ever can." What do you think my mom was doing at the church all those hours? United Methodists aren't big into evangelism, not in the traditionalist way, like knocking on doors asking, "Have you met Jesus?" They were organizing clothes drives, finding ways to help people, cooking for people, quilting for the Festival of Sharing, etc., etc. I remember Mom and Grandma getting together a bunch of women to drive four-wheel drive pickups down from Cameron, Missouri to Sedalia, full to the brim with stuff for the festival. I got to sit in the middle where the gear shift was. My favorite spot, not. Oh my, what a sight it was. But we made it eventually. The point is, I learned from a very early age from my mom and my grandmother and my great-grandmothers that the whole purpose in life is compassion for people and helping others. Now that's mercy. This way of thinking also applies to the first UU principles, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and the justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Like United Methodists, Unitarian Universalists value compassion in helping one another reach their full potential. Just look at our justice work. Not only do we serve meals at Loaves and Fishes, but we see Black lives as not only mattering, but as welcome and deserving of dignity. Now that's mercy too. The UU principles and John Wesley's words ring in my ears as I go through my life. It's in everything I do, literally. The church is and was formative for me. It makes me who I am as a kind and generous person. But maybe Dad might have had something to do with it too. As I got older, my dad got involved in church and along the way was into caring for others in a way that I recognized. Dad started helping with farm-based things for the Festival of Sharing, but there were other things outside of church that he and his farming buddies did when I was growing up that others, including I, may not have taken notice of. Only as an adult, I realized that farmers had always taken care of each other. When Dad had eye surgery, his former hired guys came back and worked for free. And when Grandma died, everyone pitched in to make sure Grandpa didn't have anything to do on the farm. That's just how it worked. So even though when I was young, Dad didn't go to church as much, I learned about helping others and compassion from him and the farming community too, in just a different way. Farming wasn't just their livelihood, it was their church. They just cussed a lot in it. That's mercy too, in a different way. This compassion caught fire in me too. Today in my job, I'm an after-school childcare supervisor. I love the heck out of my kids. When they are in my care, they are my kids. Seriously, I will care for them as if they are my own, and I will never stop until they are all safe. Everyone walks or wheels out of my program safely. I will do anything it takes to keep them safe. Anything. I will put my life on the line, and they know it. I view my job while I'm there, while I'm on duty, as the most important job in the world. Because to the parents of those kids, it is. The kids feel safe enough to play, to have fun, to be sad, to be angry, to study and be quiet, to be themselves, to be someone else, and yes, sometimes to act out. And that's okay, because I can deal with that too. And lottie, that is sure mercy too. I also have my kids doing good works for others with a monthly act of kindness. Sometimes they will gather supplies for the Rainbow House or True North, or they will make cards for the veterans at the VA, or even superhero capes for unhomed children. They do a lot, and the kids love it. That's learning and teaching mercy. Without my mom, dad, other family members, church communities, and the farming community, in different yet remarkably similar ways, I would not have learned these things. I learned to give, receive, to pray, to thank, to help, to love, to hope, and yes, to cuss. And I'm not going to tell you who taught me what. For all these things, I'm grateful. Whether it's John Wesley or the UU principles or helping your neighbor, they all stem from the same thing, mercy. Now, join us for hymn number 95, There is More Love Somewhere.
More love somewhere.
Wow. Well, thank you to everyone that helped this morning, to Linda, Kira, Jeremy, Hans, Jamila. Hopefully I'm not forgetting anybody. Definitely a big thanks to Jenny and Kate for sharing your values with us. It's so great to hear what other UUs value, and then to figure out how we can work with you to help you with your values as you can help us with ours. When looking for inspiration, music is always my muse. In fact, for those of you that would like to actually watch the video with no interruptions, I've shared a link to both of them. So one to the one we were sharing during the offering, and the one that my friend Ezzy shared with me originally. And without music, I doubt, or how should I say? And without it, I doubt, and without a doubt, I value music so very much. And I'd also like to thank all of you for allowing me to bring my flawed truth of myself to you all today as well. And there's a song by a group called Edward Sharpe and Magnetic Zeros called I Don't Want to Pray. And even though we're talking about values today, and the song has pray in the title, I promise you I'll make a connection. Here are the lyrics that really speak to me every time I hear them, especially as I worked on this service today. But I don't want to pray to my maker. I just want to be what I see. Not just who I am, but the pink and golden land and the wide, wild sky over me. Help me to the sun. Hey, I'm looking everywhere. See, I'm looking to become not the prayer, but the prayer. That line that gets me every time I hear it is, see, I'm looking to become not the prayer, but the prayer. I'm not looking to be a valuer and have these values. I'm looking to be the value. So how do we depart today? I encourage each of you to reflect on your values as well as how we become our values. What do we do to let them take root and guide us in our day-to-day lives, as well as how do we work to intertwine and weave our values with the values of others in our beloved community? For those of you joining Coffee Hour, I encourage you to discuss these questions and more. And now, if you will join in singing our benediction. All right. So there is the link for the coffee hour. I'll also get it posted here in the chat. Second for everybody. And hopefully everybody has a great day, and I love you all. Bye-bye.